Okay, welcome back. Blue Nines and Red Words. We are about to cook it on up today. Let's go. First, our central question: in what different ways can people be intelligent? Switch that highlighter over to mustard yellow, please. All right, and take a look. Let's look on the right hand first, right? Numbers. I see that twice. So part of me thinks, ooh, I wonder if some different ways that people can be intelligent has to do with math or numbers at a minimum. All right. And I see blue. Blue comes up a lot, apparently, right? And I'm wondering, I wonder if art, being artistic, is a way that people can be intelligent, right? So as we go through, we want to keep our eyes on different ways that people can be intelligent, just like Algernon, for instance, can increase and decrease in intelligence using science, right? Whereas humans have to abide by the same rules as mice, right? We have all these different that files for Algernon guiding our thinking today. Switch it on over to orange, please, and I'd like you to highlight one word here on the right hand side that seems to connect with this question: in what different ways can people be intelligent? Take the time to do that now. All right. So, prompt: Charlie Gordon in Flowers for Algernon experienced many levels of intelligence. How are Daniel Tammet's experiences? Now, I'd like you to put a red dot on Tammet real quick here, right? And I'd like you to put the other red dot right down here, just so you know right now that when we say Tammet, we mean the author. All right? All right. How are Daniel Tammet's experiences of numbers an example of a different kind of intelligence? Write an essay explaining this difference using the text blue nines and red words. And that's the one over here. Please put your two red dots right there now. And I'd like you to take a moment and find the two most important words in that prompt. Take time to do that now, please. All right. So we're going to read this story here. Let's get into it. Background: although synesthesia, the topic of this memoir excerpt, is a neurological condition, it also refers to a figure of speech. In synesthesia, one sense is described using terms typically described to another. Many common idioms are examples of synesthesia, such as "I smelled trouble" and "the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife." I was born on January 31st, 1979, a Wednesday. I know it was a Wednesday because the date is blue in my mind, and Wednesdays are always blue, like the number 9 or the sound of loud voices arguing. I like my birth date because of the way I'm able to visualize most of the numbers in it as smooth and round shapes. Similar to pebbles on a beach, that's because they are prime numbers: 31, 19, 197, 97, 79, and 1979 are all divisible only by themselves in the number 1. I can recognize every prime up to 9,973 by their pebble-like quality. It's just the way my brain works. Please load up these two magnifying glasses. And obviously, if you don't have your computer, then you're just drawing the magnifying glass. I'd like you to find a connection. So you're going to circle two things and put a little line by the circle. You're going to circle two things in this paragraph that you feel are connected. Please take the time to do that now. All right. Slide 7, paragraph 2. I have a rare condition known as savant syndrome, little known before its portrayal by actor Dustin Hoffman in the Oscar-winning 1988 film Rain Man. Like Hoffman's character, Raymond Babbitt, I have an almost obsessive need for order and routine which affects virtually every aspect of my life. For example, I eat exactly 45 grams of porridge for breakfast each morning. I weigh the bowl with an electronic scale to make sure. Then I count the number of items of clothing I'm wearing before I leave my house. I get anxious if I can't drink my cups of tea at the same time each day. Whenever I become too stressed and I can't breathe properly, I close my eyes and count. Thinking of numbers helps me to become calm again. Numbers are my friends, and they are always around me. Each one is unique and has its own personality. The number 11 is friendly and 5 is loud. whereas 4 is both shy and quiet. It's my favorite number, perhaps because it reminds me of myself. Some are big, 23, 667, 1,179, while others are small, 6, 13, 581, and some are beautiful, like 333. Some are ugly, like 289. To me, every number is special. No matter where I go or what I'm doing, numbers are never far from my thoughts. In an interview with talk show host David Letterman in New York, I told David he looked like the number 117, tall and lanky. Later, outside in the appropriately numerically named Times Square, I gazed up at the towering skyscrapers and felt surrounded by nines, the number I most associate with feelings of immensity. Scientists call my visual emotional experience of numbers synesthesia, a rare neurological mixing of the senses which most commonly results in the ability to see alphabetical letters and or numbers in color. Mine is an unusual and complex type, and through which I see numbers as shapes, colors, textures, and motions. The number 1, for example, is brilliant and bright white, like someone shining a flashlight into my eyes. 5 is a clap of thunder, or the sound of waves crashing against rocks. 37 is lumpy like porridge, while 89 reminds me of falling snow. Probably the most famous case of synesthesia was one written up over a period of 30 years from the 1920s by the Russian psychologist A.R. Luria of a journalist called Shereshevsky, with a prodigious memory. S, as Luria called him in his notes for the book, The Mind of a Mnemonist, had a highly visual memory, which allowed him to see words and numbers as different shapes and colors. S was able to remember a matrix of 50 digits after studying it for 3 minutes. Both immediately afterwards and many years later, Luria credited Shereshevsky's synesthetic experiences as the basic for his remarkable short and long term memory. Using my own synesthetic experiences since my early childhood, I have grown up with the ability to handle and calculate huge numbers in my head without any conscious effort, just like the Raymond Babbitt character. In fact, this is a talent common to several other real life savants, sometimes referred to as lightning calculators. Dr. Daryl Treffert, a Wisconsin physician and the leading researcher in the study of savant syndrome, gives one example of a blind man with a faculty of calculating to a degree little short of marvelous in his book, Extraordinary People. Quote, when he was asked how many grains of corn there would be in one of 64 boxes, with 1 in the first, 2 in the second, and 4 in the third, 8 in the fourth, and so on, he gave answers for the 14th, 8,902, 192, for the 18th, 131,072, and the 24th, 8,388,608 instantaneously, and he gave the figures for the 48th box, 140737488355328 in 6 seconds. He also gave the total in all 64 boxes correctly, which is 18,446,744,073,709,551,616 in 45 seconds. Wee. Ooh wee. Paragraph 9. My favorite kind of calculation is power multiplication, which means multiplying a number by itself a specified number of times. Multiplying a number by itself is called squaring. For example, the square of 72 is 72 times 72 equals 5,184. Squares are always symmetrical shapes in my mind, which makes them especially beautiful to me. Multiplying the same number 3 times over is called cubing or raising to the third power. The cube or the third power of 51 is equivalent to 51 times 51 times 51, and that equals 132,651. I see each result of a power multiplication as a distinctive visual pattern in my head. As the sums and their results grow, so the mental shapes and colors I experience become increasingly more complex. I see 37's fifth power, 37 times 37 times 37 times 37 times 37 equals 69,343,957, as a large circle composed of smaller circles running clockwise from the top around. Paragraph 10. When I divide one number by another, in my head, I see a spiral rotating downwards in larger and larger loops, which seems to warp and curve. Different divisions produce different sizes of spirals with varying curves. From my mental imagery, I'm able to calculate a sum like 13 divided by 97, 0.1340206, etc., to almost 100 decimal places. I never write anything down when I'm calculating because I'm always able to do the sums in my head. And it's much easier for me to visualize the answer using my synesthetic shapes than to try to follow to the carry the one techniques taught in textbooks we are given at school. When multiplying, I see the two numbers as distinct shapes. The image changes and a third shape emerges, the correct answer. The process takes a matter of seconds and happens spontaneously. It's like doing math without having to think. In the illustration in the book above, I'm multiplying 53 by 131. I see both numbers as a unique shape and locate each spatially opposite the other. The space created between the two shapes creates a third, which I perceive as a new number, 6,943, the solution to the sum. Different tasks involve different shapes, and I also have various sensations or emotions for certain numbers. Whenever I multiply with 11, I always experience a feeling of the digits tumbling downward in my head. I find sixes hardest to remember of all the numbers because I experience them as tiny black dots without any distinctive shape or texture. I would describe them as like little gaps or holes, and I have a visual and sometimes emotional responses to every number up to 10,000, like having my own visual numerical vocabulary. And just like a poet's choice of words, I find some combinations of numbers more beautiful than others. Ones go well with darker numbers like eights and nines, but not so well with sixes. A telephone number with a sequence of 189 is as much more beautiful to me than one with a sequence like 116. The aesthetic dimensions to my synesthesia is something that has its ups and downs. If I see a number I experience as particularly beautiful on a shop sign or a car license plate, there's a shiver of excitement and pleasure. On the other hand, if numbers don't match my experience of them, if, for example, a shop's price has a 99 pence in red or green instead of blue, then I find that uncomfortable and irritating. It is known as many savants have synesthetic experiences that help them in the areas they excel in. One reason for this is that, like Raymond Babbitt, many suffer profound disability preventing them from explaining to others how they do the things that they do. I'm fortunate not to suffer from any of the most severe impairments that often come with abilities such as mine. Like most individuals with savant syndrome, I am also on the autistic spectrum. I have Asperger's syndrome, a relatively mild and high functioning kind of autism that affects 1 in every 300 people in the United Kingdom. According to a 2001 study by the UK's National Autistic Society, nearly half of all adults with Asperger's syndrome are not diagnosed until the age of 16. I was finally diagnosed at the age 25 following tests and an interview at the Autism Research Centre in Cambridge. Autism, including Asperger's syndrome, is defined by the presence of impairments affecting social interaction, communication, and imagination, problems with abstract or flexible thought and empathy, for example. Diagnosis is not easy and cannot be made by a blood test or a brain scan. Doctors have to observe behavior and study the individual's developmental history from infancy. People with Asperger's syndrome often have good language skills and are able to lead relatively normal lives. Many have above average IQs and excel in areas that involve logical or visual thinking. Like other forms of autism, Asperger's is a condition affecting many more men than women. Around 80% of autistics and 90% of those diagnosed with Asperger's are men. Single mindedness is a defining characteristic of a strong drive to analyze detail and identify rules and patterns in systems. Specialized skills involving memory, numbers, and mathematics are common. It is not known for certain what causes someone to have Asperger's, though it is something you are born with. For as long as I can remember, I've experienced numbers in the visual synesthetic way that I do. Numbers are my first language one I often think and feel in. Emotions can be hard for me to understand or know how to react to, and I often use numbers to help me. If a friend says they feel sad or depressed, I picture myself sitting in the dark hollowness of number 6 to help me experience the same sort of feeling and understand it. If I read in an article that a person felt intimidated by something, I imagine myself standing next to the number 9. Whenever someone describes visiting a beautiful place, I recall my numerical landscapes and how happy they make me feel inside. By doing this, numbers actually help me get closer to understanding other people. Sometimes, people I meet for the first time remind me of a particular number, and this helps me to be comfortable around them. They might be very tall and remind me of the number 9, or round and remind me of the number 3. If I feel unhappy or anxious or in a situation I have no previous experience of, when I'm much more likely to feel stressed and uncomfortable, I count to myself. When I count, the numbers form pictures and patterns in my mind that are consistent and reassuring to me. Then I can relax and interact with whatever situation I'm in. Thinking of calendars always makes me feel good. All those numbers and patterns in one place, different days of the week, elicit different colors and emotions in my head. Tuesdays are a warm color, while Thursdays are fuzzy. Calendrical calculation, the ability to tell which day of the week a particular date fell or will fall on, is common to many savants. I think this is probably due to the fact that the numbers in calendars are predictable and form patterns between the different days and months. For example, the 13th day in a month is always 2 days before whatever day the first falls on, excepting leap years, while several of the months mimic the behavior of others like January and October, September and December, and February and March. The first day of February is the same as the first day of March. So, if the 1st of February is a fuzzy texture in my mind, Thursday, for a given year, the 13th of March will be a warm color, Tuesday. In his book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, writer and neurologist Oliver Sacks mentions the case of severely autistic twins John and Michael as an example of how far some savants are able to take calendrical calculations. Though unable to care for themselves, they had been in various institutions since the age of 7. The twins were capable of calculating the day of the week for any date over a 40,000 year span. Sachs also describes John and Michael as playing a game that involved us swapping prime numbers with each other for hours at a time. Like the twins, I've always been fascinated by prime numbers, and I see each prime as a smooth textured shape, distinct from the composite numbers, non primes, that are grittier and less distinctive. Whenever I identify a number as prime, I get a rush of feeling in my head in the front center, which is hard to put into words. It's a special feeling, like the sudden sensation of pins and needles. Sometimes I close my eyes and imagine the first 30, 50, 100 numbers as I experience them spatially, synesthetically. Then I can see in my mind's eye just how beautiful and special the primes are by the way they stand out so sharply from the other number shapes. It's exactly for this reason that I look and look and look at them. Each one is so different from the one before and the one after. Their loneliness among the other numbers makes them so conspicuous and interesting to me. There are moments as I'm falling into sleep at night that my mind fills suddenly with bright light, and all I can see are numbers, hundreds, thousands of them swimming rapidly over my eyes. The experience is beautiful and soothing to me. Some nights, when I'm having difficulty falling asleep, I imagine myself walking around my numerical landscapes. Then I feel safe and happy. I never feel lost because the prime number shapes act as signposts. We will begin to pre-write and think about the TDA prompt to match this story soon.